Hi, fifth graders. Let's move on to part 5. Remember, you need the rest of the parts done before you move on to part 5. I know our cover sheet said you didn't say anything about part 5, but you must get it done today. So, part 5 is all about grab bags. So what we're going to be looking at are fractions, ratios, decimals, and percentages. All of these 4 mathematical numbers are ways we express data. So I found this really cool picture. Ratios, fractions, percentages, decimals. You'll notice they have similar numbers. Like fractions and ratios are really similar, and percent and decimals are really similar, and we're going to look at why. So you can turn and pause and take a look at this picture for a second. But if you look, right, 3, a fraction is pretty much the same as a ratio. And then we divide fractions, or we turn the fraction to be over 100, and then that turns it into a decimal and then a percentage. So we are going to be able to find our decimals a little easier today or this time, instead of just dividing, because we are going to be doing a grab bag. So kids love buying candy grab bags because it's a surprise what candy they will find inside. The best thing about grab bags is that there is a lot of different mix of candy inside. Grab bags can make you a lot of money. So we are going to choose 3 types of candies. We need to figure out how many candies fit in it for a total of 20 pieces. So I want you to decide on your 3 types. Ms. Sharp is going to use hard candy, chocolate bar, and gummy bears. So pause, decide on your 3 types, and come on back. Gummy bears. Next thing we need to do is we need to figure out how many pieces of hard candy do you want, how many chocolate bars do you want, and how many gummy bears do you want. You can only have a total of 20 candies all together. So I'm going to do 10 gummy bears, 2 chocolate bars, and 8 hard candies. That's going to be in my graph. 8 plus 2 plus 10 is 20. You need a total of 20. Pause the video, determine how many, and come on back. So instead of going across this way and figuring out everything for each candy, we're going to do all the fractions together, then all the ratios, and all the decimals, and all the percentages. Or at least we're going to start with all the fractions first. We may go back and forth. So our fraction is going to be, right, it's always part over total. Well, the total is how much candy is in each bag. So our total is always going to be 20. And then our part is how much of that candy. So how many hard candies out of 20? So mine is 8. 8 hard candies out of 20. That would be my fraction. For chocolate bars, I have 2 out of 20. And for gummy bears, I have 10 out of 20. Taking this number over here and turning it into my fraction, or my numerator. Give it a pause. Let me know once you have, or unpause when you are ready. The next thing we are going to work on is ratio. Ratio is just a different way of looking at a fraction. So ratio just compares the 2 numbers. And we are going to turn our ratio into the simplest form, and there's a reason for that. So the ratio would be 8 out of 20. So basically, instead of using a line for a fraction, we use 2 dots. The numerator goes first, the denominator goes second. 8 out of 20. But I need to make this in the simplest form. So we're going to simplify, just like we could simplify the fraction by dividing by 2 over 2. Or we could do the same thing, divide by 2, divide by 2. So I could get 4/10 as a fraction, or 4 out of 10. But I can keep going. I'm going to divide by 2 over 2 again. I'm going to do it as a fraction. And I get 2/5. So my final ratio is 2/5. I'm going to circle that so you can see it better. So my fraction's 2/5 and my ratio is 2/5. So let's do it again for the chocolate bar. I'm going to divide this by 2/2. And I'm going to get 1/10. So that way my ratio is 2 out of 20. These dots, we use dots to show out of, for 1 out of 10. The ratio is still the same. This one is just the simplified version. Just like this is the simplified version of the fraction. My last one, I'm just going to get rid of my zeros, and I have 1/2. 1/2. 1 out of 2. Pause the video. Go ahead, figure out your ratios. Come on back when you are ready. So the next thing we're going to do is decimals. In the part before this, we were dividing our numerator by our denominator. But that can be a little tricky, as we saw before, because we're working with such small numbers. If you think back to a couple weeks ago, we used a different way to change a fraction to a decimal. And we did that by multiplying by 10, 100, or 1,000. So all of our numbers should be divisible or should be able to change to 10, 100, or 1,000, especially because we started with 20. So whether you're using your most simplified form of a fraction, so like 2/5, 1/10, 1/2, or you're using the larger form, so out of 20, you could change it to 10, 100, or 1,000. Always, because 10 or 20, is a multiple of 100. So I'm going to start by doing hard candy. I'm going to use my simplified fraction or my simplified ratio. I can use either one. 2/5. So I need to change 2/5 to have a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. So, I know 2/5 I can change into 10. So something over 10, so that's 2/2. So that's 4/10. 4/10 looks like this, 4/10. Or I take out my place value chart. Or I just have my place value chart. Where did my place value chart go? 4/10. What does 4/10 look like? Here it is. What does 4/10 look like? 4 in the tenths place, right here. So it'd be decimal point 4. Right? 4/10, 4/10, 4/10. So this would be decimal point 4. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple more. So let's pretend I have to do it out of 20. Out of 20. So say I'm going to move on and I'm going to do 2 out of 20. My ratio is 2 out of 20 or 2/20. I need to change this to be out of 10, 100, or 1,000. Well, I know 20. I can't change it to 10, but I can change it to 100 by multiplying by 5. 20 times 5 is 100, so I multiply by 5/5, because whatever I do on the top, I do to the bottom. And I get 10 hundredths, right? We say this as 10 hundredths. Some of us I know can visualize it. Others need a place value chart. 10 hundredths. Remember, our number ends in whatever column we said 10 hundredths. So our number ends in the hundredths chart, so it's decimal point 1. Okay, and last but not least is 1 out of 2 or 10 out of 20. 1 out of 2, 1/2. Oh, that's easy. I'm going to multiply it by something, and I need to change it to a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. I'm going to choose 10. So I multiply by 5/5, and I got 5/10. I'm going to change it to say, 5/10 or 5/10. Just coming back to anyone remember? put my 5 here, or just visualize what does 5/10 look like as a decimal. 5 in my tenths place. 5/10. Go ahead, go figure out your decimals, unpause the video when you are ready. Now this is the easy part. We change a decimal to a percentage. To change a decimal to a percentage, you multiply by 100. So we're going to take 0.4, which is right here. Let's get a little, or 4/10, and we're going to multiply by 100. So I could take 4/10 when I multiply by 100. I do 1, 2 jumps, 2 jumps. If you're using this, we're multiplied by 100. It's 2 jumps. 1, 2. So we get 40%. 40%. But Miss Sharp, I don't have my handy dandy place value sheet. Well, you can do the same thing. 1, 2, add a placeholder. 40%. Now I'm going to do 0.1 or 1/10. I'm going to do this. I ran out of room. So 1, 2. Make sure your jumps are nice and big so you can tell where a 0 goes. 10%. Last but not least, 5/10 times 100. 1, 2. I get 50. So 50%. Go ahead, pause the video, figure out your percentages. Remember, to find a percentage, you multiply by your decimal by 100. Now, to check if you're right, you add up your percentages, and they should equal 100. So that's 0. 4 plus 1 is 5. 5 plus 5 is 100, and I get 100. So I know that is all correct. So notice how the fractions and ratios use the same number, and the decimals and percentages use the same number. All of these numbers mean the same thing. We just looked at our data and changed how we are viewing the number. All 4 of these things mean the same thing. I want 40% of the cake, or 0.4 of the cake, or 8 out of 20, or 8/20. That all means the same thing. Pretty cool, huh? Go ahead, finish this. Can't wait to see it when I check your work.